Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaivam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakaacharya Ashtotra Sada Sri Śrīmad Abhay-Charana-Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistikhi. Today we are continuing to read from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 26, entitled King Puranjana Goes to the Forest to Hunt. Text 4. Chachara mrigayam tatra dripta atteshu karmuka vihaya jayam atad arham mriga vyasana lalasah chachara mrigayam tatra dripta ateshu karmukaha vihaya jayam atad arham mriga vyasana lalasaha chachara mrigayam tatra dripta ateshu karmukaha vihaya jayam atad arham mriga vyasana lalasaha Mataji's. Word to word meaning. Chachara, executed. Mrigayam, hunting. Tatra, there. Triptaha, being proud. Ata, having taken. Ishu, arrows. Karmukaha, bow. Vihaya, giving up. Jayam, his wife. Atad arham, although impossible. Mriga, hunting. Vyasana, evil activities. Lalasaha, being inspired by. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. It was impossible for King Puranjana to give up the company of his queen even for a moment. Nonetheless, on that day, being very much inspired by the desire to hunt, he took up his bow and arrow with great pride and went to the forest, not caring for his wife. Purport. One form of hunting is known as women hunting. A conditioned soul is never satisfied with one wife. Those whose senses are very much uncontrolled especially try to hunt for many women. King Puranjana's abandoning the company of his religiously married wife is representative of the conditioned soul's attempt to hunt for many women for sense gratification. Wherever a king goes, he is supposed to be accompanied by his queen. But when a king or conditioned soul becomes greatly overpowered by the desire for sense gratification, he does not care for religious principles. Instead, with great pride, he accepts the bow and arrow of attachment and hatred. Our consciousness is always working in two ways, the right way and the wrong way. When one becomes too proud of his position, influenced by the mode of passion, he gives up the right path and accepts the wrong one. Kshatriya kings are sometimes advised to go to the forest to hunt ferocious animals just to learn how to kill. But such forays are never meant for sense gratification. Killing animals to eat their flesh is forbidden for human beings. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruho Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once one pure devotee of the Lord who was very young, just like the young boys here, he advised his father. What did he advise? Who was a young pure devotee? Prahlad Maharaj, very good. What was he advising his father? To become a devotee, okay. He specifically asked his father to go somewhere. Go to the forest. So Prabhupada there is specifically he asked his father to go to forest. There Prahlad Maharaj describes that those who can't control their senses, so in that section they cannot reach Krishna out of their own endeavors or by the advice of the others. Here we see an uncontrolled king loaded up with all the explosives, two explosives very specifically, the ego. Everything belongs to me, this body is mine, and everything related to my body is also mine. Two explosive weapons. Then he's got a chariot, which is his body, and then there are three flags, which is the three modes, and then the two wheels, which is going in the right and the wrong, which is the dharmic path and the adharmic path. Yesterday, Karnanadi Prabhu described nicely about how the living entity gets to travel this path, facing so many obstacles, which is the life airs within the body. And yesterday's verse talked about the desire for hunting indicates a mode of ignorance, and certain ornaments which the king is wearing, King Puranjana is wearing, represents the golden ornaments, and the shield represent the mode of passion. So here in this verse, the chariot is going more and more towards the wrong direction. And here this verse particularly talks about giving up the company of the queen. So queen here represents what? The intelligence. There's a few verses in the Gita which describe when the living entity loses intelligence. One such verse is where Krishna explains that the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place in certain people. So who are such people? Whose Yeah, Bhoga Aishwarya Prashaktanam, that verse. What does he describe in that? One who is too much attached to Bhoga, sense enjoyment, Aishwarya, wealth. What happens? He loses the resolute determination for performing devotional service. In this case, King Puranjana is overcome by desire to enjoy, and that's why he's got all the commanders, equipments, arrows. Arrows represents the unlimited desires, and the two powerful arrows, which is the components of the ego. Accompanied by all that and excessive desires to enjoy, then the natural consequence is you lose your determination and your intelligence. So there is Vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhavana vidiyate. Fixed determination, Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Prabhupada translates buddhi in this verse as devotional service to the Lord. It does not take place. So one is too much attached to material wealth and opulence and has got unlimited desires to satisfy, and at this point of time in Puranjana's life, his body is also cooperating. He's got all the commanders and everybody is willing to fulfill his desires. And he is giving up the company of the queen, which represents the intelligence, which is normally very hard to give up. As Prabhupada describes in one of the purports, that if the infection in the body is strong enough, it may overcome the power of the medicine also. Similarly, the polluted mind, which has taken control over a person, feasting on the desires and gaining power, overcomes the intelligence. So king is leaving behind the intelligence and going towards sense enjoyment. In this case, he is also going to a forest. That forest is described as Pancha Parsha, the forest of sense enjoyment. Yes, as per Prahlad Maharaj's instruction, Hiranyakashipu was directed to go to Vrindavan, which is also a forest, but now we see Puranjana, the king, without advice of anybody, he is rushing towards the forest of material enjoyment, where there is a lot of promise of enjoying. So this particular section where the journey of the living entity is described as going towards the path of adharma, irreligiosity, it will actually bring out the tendencies within us to secretly enjoy, and then cultivate a lot of desires within us secretly. And when the situation around us is very favorable, and when the sense objects are overpowering and the mind is strong enough, then it pushes behind the intelligence, despite the fact that we know it is the wrong path. We are dragged towards such path. Sorry? Pravritti Marg. So this sequence Krishna explains in the second chapter, as you all know, the famous sequence of events that lead up to the fall of intelligence. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. Starting with that, contemplate on the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment. So that's what here is talked about. He is too much attached. So Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsa Sangateshu Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kama Krodho Vijayate. So when describing that sequence, the end result is that the person loses his intelligence. So in the same chapter, the same sequence, Krishna also describes a rising up. Just as he described a falling down, he also describes a rising up sequence, where he goes on to say that Raga Dvesha Vimuktaisthu Vishayan Indriyais Charan Atma Vashyar Videyatma Prasadam Adi Gacchati. So from this verse onwards, the recovery begins. 2.64 onwards, the recovery begins. So that's why the wisdom in the Gita not only describes the problem, but it also gives a solution and is very practical in day-to-day application as to how we can see as a sequence that lead you to fall down, and there is also a way to recover. Raga, Dvesha, attachment and detachment. So one who is able to free himself from the attachment and aversion to sense objects. Now Prabhupada translates that verse as able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom. That's what is described. Regulative principles are not considered as a burden. So if you are given a car without any brakes, how much speed will that give you? How fast can you go in that car without brakes, without fear? So you will be totally scared to drive such a car. Now the regulative principles are the brakes. It should not be considered as a torture. They are there to prevent us from getting into accidents. So a car without brakes is bound to have accidents. So regulative principles Prabhupada describes as freedom. So when you follow the traffic rules with the knowledge of road safety for yourself and for others, no police is going to catch you. You are free. Because you are following the traffic rules, you are free. So the way to attain freedom is by following regulative principles. And the sequence is described in such a way that what do I get by controlling my senses? That is described as one attains the complete mercy of the Lord. That's what is described as prasadam adi gacchati. In that purport, Prabhupada describes that sense control should not be done artificially, but it should be done by engaging the senses in the service of the Lord. A person who is starting off in a sensual plane where his consciousness is more towards sense gratification, even such a person can start devotional service under the guidance of his spiritual master. And he may apparently seem to be attached to the sensual plane, but Prabhupada writes that despite being attached to the sensual platform, if a sincere person works towards satisfying Guru and Krishna, he will gradually get out of the attachment for sensual activities, because his aim is to satisfy only Krishna. And that's how he overcomes the attachment and detachment, the raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion. So for the purpose of Krishna's satisfaction, a devotee gives up anything which is undesirable, and for Krishna's satisfaction, he may even perform activities which may normally seem adharmic from a worldly point of view, like Yudhishthira Maharaj being asked to tell a lie, but that was directed by the Lord, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So Lord Krishna is directing him to tell a lie. So a devotee is not afraid to give up activities which are normally he wants to do, and he is willing to do activities which he normally doesn't like to do. So that's how he is overcoming attachment and aversion. And what do I get by that is the mercy of the Lord, the prasadam, mercy of the Lord. That's what you obtain. So the sense control and mind control are described in many places in the Bhagavad Gita. It's better to control at the level of the mind itself rather than trying to control the senses, because mind is the seat of enjoyment. That's where you imagine you will enjoy or suffer. But then if that's not possible, if the senses have overpowered, at least not give up the fight, like letting go of the consciousness in the wrong direction. That's where the Puranjana is heading towards. So let's look at this from the viewpoint of a real life example where you have a lot of wealth you need to take care of, and you are in a protected room, and the room is not locked, and outside the room you know that people are waiting to snatch the wealth that you are having. So it is better to keep the room locked, bolt, and whatever precaution that you need to do, you need to take care so that you protect the wealth. But for some reason, if the door is not locked and the thieves or the burglars, they have entered the room, now what will you do? What will you do? You'll try to prevent. You'll try to hide. Okay, that's also an option. Will you not go and rush to lock the door when they're trying to come in? At least when the attempts are made, will you just go outside? Oh, here is the wealth, take it and go. No, you won't do that. You will try your best to attempt to lock the door, but they are trying to get in. Now the second thing is they have overpowered and they have got in. Now you will not just hand over the wealth to them without any fight. So that's what the first scenario is, keeping the room bolt and locked, where you control at the level of the mind itself. But then if that doesn't happen, somehow the senses have overpowered and they have broken in, and they are as a tiger has tasted the blood, the senses have tasted sense gratification and they want more. So in that case, just as you don't hand over the wealth to the burglar and say, okay, here is it, go for it. You will try to protect that. As she said, you may try to run away. You do all the attempts to protect. So that wealth you are protecting is your devotion to Krishna, which is being taken away by the burglars of sense gratification and lack of mind and sense control. So ideal is to control at the level of mind itself, but that if that's not possible, at least when the senses have overpowered us, we don't just give in, we continue with the fight. And as Krishna describes here, by following the regulative principles of freedom, one gets the mercy of the Lord. And that's where we go to the next step in the recovery cycle, where Krishna describes, after having got the mercy of the Lord, what happens? Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanir ashyopapjayate prasanna chetaso hi ashu buddhi pari avatistate. Now we saw the falling down sequence, where now we are in the recovery sequence, where we got the mercy of the Lord. Then what happens after that? After having attained the mercy of the Lord, for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, what does he get back? The one that he lost, which is the buddhi. The buddhi becomes established. One's intelligence is soon well established. So the sequence is described where he achieves the mercy, he gets out of the miseries, his mind is happy and intelligence is re-established. That's how the second chapter describes both the falling down sequence and also another side. Krishna describes the recovery sequence also. It begins with the control of the senses, control of the mind, continue to engage in devotional service through the guidance of a spiritual teacher. And we saw the regulative principles are not burden, but they are getting you to freedom. By that you get the mercy of the Lord. By the mercy of the Lord you are satisfied. Material miseries go away. Mind is happy, then the intelligence is soon established. By that you attain transcendental intelligence. That's a sequence. Now it's 2.66. Nasti bhuktir ayuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na chabhavayata shantir asantasya kuta sukam. So it is described in, if you don't get this, there is no possibility of going to the next step. So that's how it's described. There is no transcendental intelligence or a steady mind, then there is no possibility of peace. And if there is no peace, there is no question of happiness. So we can take it in the positive way that if I get transcendental intelligence and steady mind, I'll be peaceful, and by becoming peaceful, I'll be happy. So that's how the recovery cycle finishes. So with this knowledge, when we know that our chariot is going in the wrong direction, which happens many times, we can redirect the chariot and bring it back in the proper direction by gaining the transcendental intelligence back by satisfied mind and being peaceful and achieving happiness. But this does not happen always, the road of recovery. One of the key qualities that will prevent us from attaining this happiness cycle, and one of the qualities which is described here in this particular verse, which is a demoniac quality, is the great pride. The purport describes, instead with great pride, he accepts the bow and arrow of attachment and hatred. So we know that there is a recovery cycle, but one of the impediments which I felt personally from analyzing my own consciousness, for me one of the great block is pride, which takes me in the wrong direction. So I was reading further about how to overcome pride. And the next section I would like to focus on the instructions to the mind by Raghunath Das Goswami. It's called the Manasiksha, where I found information about overcoming pride, which is listed as the first in the demoniac qualities, Damba, Darpa, Abhimanascha. So demoniac qualities, the first one is the Damba, which is the pride. So in the first instructions to the mind, Raghunath Das Goswami begins by instructing the mind to take shelter of Guru, Vaishnavas, the holy Dham, the devotional service, and the process of surrender. And immediately he says, always give up pride. So giving up pride is not like you take a shovel and then you take it out and throw it once and it's gone forever. It keeps coming back again and again. One has to constantly check. This section is, I'm trying to, for my own purification, where one has to constantly be vigilant and check the influence of pride. It's not that once we achieve some big things, like you have, say you have given a nice class, or you have distributed many books, or you have coordinated a big festival, and after that pride comes up. Prabhupada describes that it's there within us when describing that section in the 16th chapter. Right from the birth it's there, it comes out when the situation arises. I think in the 16th chapter, when 16.4, these demoniac qualities are taken on by them, which is, I would conclude from the beginning of their bodies in the womb of their mother, and as they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So it's there, dormant, and then it comes out when the situation is favorable. So the sources of pride, Kunti Devi describes in her prayers: Janma, birth; Aishwarya, wealth; being praised by others; being beautiful or handsome. So these are all the some of the sources by which we can become proud. The elements of pride is described by His Holiness Sevaram Swami in his commentary to this first instruction to the mind, where he picks up from Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur's description. So these are the elements of the pride. The first one is illusion. Illusion means one becomes satisfied, or one tends to become too complacent by the things that he has achieved materially. By the material accomplishments, by the results that we achieve, we may become satisfied and complacent. So I was reflecting on this, like in real world we set targets, we set key performance indicators, KPIs or whatever it is. So these are all set, and then we work towards it, we achieve. That tendency may creep in, and we may do the same thing in spiritual activities also. We may be satisfied by our own accomplishments and we become complacent. That's the characteristics of illusion, which is one of the element of pride. The second element is deceit. Deceit is one becomes satisfied with the externals that he has obtained in course of doing devotional service. It could be one's dress, one's mannerism, one's demeanor. So while doing bhakti also we get a lot of, our externals change a lot. So if one is satisfied with that and thinks that he is he's attaching a lot of importance to only the externals and is satisfied with that, so that is described as deceit. The third element is pretense. Pretending to do bhakti but having ulterior motives. I'm having desires other than to please Krishna, but I'm pretending to do bhakti. So this can be checked by going back to the definition of pure devotional service, which is Anya Abhilashita Shunyam. So that's when I recollected that if devotional service has to be uninterrupted, it has to be unmotivated. So why am I getting interrupted a lot is because my motive is not pure. So the way to get out of pretense is to check the motives. Now, the idea is not to give up the action itself, because one may think, okay, I'm doing a lot of activities, I'm getting a lot of accomplishments, so that's how I'm becoming proud, so I'll give up my activities. So then there won't be any pride. But pride will still be there, and when we see that others are accomplishing many things and others are getting the glory, so the same pride will manifest as envy towards them. So it is better to engage our natural skills that we have instead of being afraid of getting proud. So the principle is not to give up the action, but to check the intention and have a proper intention. So that describes pretentious or pretense. So instead of doing pretentious devotional service, it's good to do pure devotional service, which means we are clear about what the goal is. Next element of pride is ignorance, where you forget who you are and you tend to identify yourself with who you are not. And that's the direction in which King Puranjana is heading towards. He has all the commanders, the chariot and the unlimited desires and all that, and he is heading towards, he is forgetting his actual position of his spiritual identity and is heading towards the wrong direction. So ignorance is also an element of pride, where you forget your spiritual identity and you take up an artificial material identity. What comes next is the deviousness, which means is very closely related to pretense, where you have a deviant mentality, where you start to develop ulterior motives and you start to deviate and act in that way. And the last is the offense, where it manifests externally. As we know, offenses towards the holy name, offenses in your seva, and then offense, Vaishnava aparad, offenses towards other devotees, Jiva aparad, Nama aparad, Vaishnava aparad, then Dham aparad. So these are the elements that cause pride. just to summarize, illusion, deceit, pretense, ignorance, deviousness, and finally offense. These are all the elements of pride. Reading this gave me a good understanding of what's going on within me and where I need to correct myself. As always, we don't discuss only the problem, we also discuss the solution. Now the first point that is described as part of solution is to always remember your spiritual master when you're doing spiritual activities, even for that matter material activities, because the body, mind and your wealth, everything becomes a property of the spiritual master. So when we are doing it as their representative, then whatever comes, whatever praise or wealth or resources that you get, so you can offer and you should offer them to your spiritual master. So feeling your spiritual master's presence always helps to check pride. Second is to serve advanced devotees. One of the verse, I forgot the whole thing, Damba Mahatupasaya. Mahatupasaya means by serving the Mahats, by getting their instructions, by getting their corrections. It's a good way to check pride. We touched upon this little earlier, that we continue the devotional service and not to give up devotional service. I kind of went into the solution also. By continuing to do devotional service despite having pride, what happens is, because you're sincere and you are following and you're trying to remember your spiritual master and dedicate the results to them. Now, the sense of achievement or accomplishment, that doesn't stay with you. You are passing it on to the spiritual master and the previous acharyas, and that is the safe way. It's a safety net for you. By that, you obtain the blessings of the spiritual master. His Holiness Sachinandan Swami recollects in this regard that when he travels in Vrindavan, because he is in the sannyas dress, a lot of them come and try to touch his feet. And he writes that if I think and accept that respect it's for me, that will actually literally kill me. So he says he takes it and passes it on to his spiritual master, in this case His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So that way he says it's safe. So otherwise that same worship may turn to pride and that will kill. So by passing it on to the previous, to the spiritual master and to the previous acharyas, we continue the devotional service despite having identified the problem. And as we described earlier, devotional service gives prasadam, which is the satisfaction. So you are able to compare the titillation or the momentary pleasure that you get by being proud or acting in that way, you compare that with the lasting happiness from devotional service. So then, by gradually experiencing that, you give up the intention and not the action itself, which is your devotional service. Another solution is to read, this may seem very known to everybody, but read Krishna's pastime, which is very specific to taking away pride. This is where Sivaram Swami gives more details. So pride, which arises from residual bad habits which you carried from the previous lifetimes, as Prabhupada describes, we are carrying from, and it just from our young age, right from the womb of the mother, is there. So by reading Krishna's pastime where he kills the demon Shakatasura, you get out of pride which comes from residual bad habits from the previous lifetimes. During the course of bhakti, you may gain a lot of knowledge, you may become a scholar, and you may get proud. So by reading the pastime of Trinavrata, that exemplifies pride due to scholarship, you can overcome pride by reading Trinavrata pastime. One may be proud due to aristocracy or high birth. So we recently had Damodar month where Krishna pulled the trees down, Yamala and the Arjuna trees. So reading that pastime helps to get out of pride due to aristocracy, high birth. Sometimes we may be proud due to a devious mentality, as we described, and crookedness. So reading Kaliya pastime helps us overcome that mentality. We may be proud due to our position in the Varnashram. I'm a Brahmana, or I'm a Kshatriya. So by reading the Yajnik Brahmanas' pastimes as to how they hesitated to offer Lord when he wanted, whereas their wives were able to do that. So reading that pastime helps us to overcome pride which is coming out of position in Varnashram. Aristasura pastimes helps us to overcome pride arising out of practicing false religious principles. It's highly relevant in this case because King Prachinabarhishat is going into so much of animal killing in the name of religion, and one has to give up that mentality. I'll stress upon the animal killing as it's described in the purport also. If you have a belief that animals don't have life, they don't have any sensation, and they are just there for me to exploit. If you have that core belief in you, and coupled with your desire to eat meat, coupled with your uncontrolled senses, so with your belief and your motive and with your uncontrolled senses and a lot of desires, you kill animals mercilessly. So the way out, that's also a sense of pride in the sense like I can do whatever I like and get away with it. And these are for my enjoyment. So to get out of that is to change the belief itself, saying that I am a living being, I have feelings, pain, pleasure. That's why you'll see some of the YouTube or Facebook clips where young children, when the father takes a knife and goes to cut the chicken, the children will cry out and they can't tolerate it. That's when they're actually pure, they're very close to godly nature. And the parents will stop. They won't. Every time the father goes near the chicken with a knife, the child will scream. So, if the belief is that these living beings also have life, they have senses, they have pain, pleasure, and I should not do, when you change that belief, that I should not harm other living beings, whether in the matter through religious practice or irreligious practice, I will not do that, then the rest will follow. Your actions, your desires, everything will also change gradually. So, Aristasura reading Aristasura's pastime helps us overcome pride arising due to practicing false religious principles. In the spiritual life also we may be put in higher positions, like a guru or a sannyasi, or other big positions, if one becomes too proud of that, one can get out of that by reading Keshi demon pastime of Krishna killing Keshi demon, that pastime. If you read, you can get out of pride arising from position due to your, in the spiritual circles you get positions. So if you have become proud out of that, you can get out by reading Krishna killing the Keshi demon. So we kind of looked at the elements of pride and analyzed as to how we can check that by considering ourselves to be an instrument, nimitta matram, and passing on the glories, whatever we receive out of devotion service to the to spiritual master and the previous acharyas, and thereby we are able to check pride, which is one of the major blocks for us to get the mercy of the Lord. So that's the whole sequence we described as to how we had a falling down sequence, then we had a recovery sequence, and what prevents us from recovering is the pride, and we also saw how we can overcome the demoniac mentality of pride. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions related to what we discussed today. Yes.
Prabhu, you were mentioning about that very point that you just said, there's a fall down cycle and the verses in Bhagavad-Gita, second chapter, they talk about the fall down and then they talk about recovery.
Yeah.
So, and you said how, usually sometimes even in our life the chariots goes in the wrong way. Like, I'm just struggling to understand how pride is an impediment when you talk about recovery eventually.
Yeah, how is it that pride is an impediment in the recovery cycle? Because it makes you believe that whatever I am doing is right and I don't have to consult others. So which means it prevents you from associating with the devotees, and if there's no one to tell or correct, so then you'll keep on going in the wrong direction. That's what I feel. It will prevent you from recovering in the sense that if, say for example, Bharat Maharaj pastime is there in the Bhagavatam, if he were in the association of devotee, they would have told him like, say, look, it's going a bit too much, now you need to focus on. So that was not out of pride, I'm giving as an example for devotee association, that if that's there, so but pride will prevent us from taking the association or taking advice or consulting others. Is that clear?
Some aspects of your life, what I'm thinking is there's a problem here and there's a solution here. You're saying it stops a person from even going to the solution, but
Yes.
the devotee is here and we see there's a problem, here's a solution. So after we start applying the solution, there may be other problems, but how's
Yeah, so the pride is not the only problem. So your question is, okay, there's a solution, there's problem, and devotees are applying it, and that's why this whole Manasiksha talks about a plunderers in the path of bhakti. So first instruction is that of giving up, always give up pride, sada dambam hitva. And then there's a whole sequence of, so if you progress to the next step, then there is a next set of challenges and solution. Then when you clean out the gross anarthas, then there is a next level of anarthas which are more subtle, and there are solutions like that. So Her Grace Urmila Mataji has given the seminar, you can look it up on YouTube. And the Manasiksha book is available in Kindle version also. So that's how I got it. So there, as you rightly said, it's not that we overcome one and then we are done with it. So it's whole sequence. Anyone wants to add to that? Or yes, bro.
Thank you very much, Haripurush. Nice lecture. What about
It's not, yeah, I was preaching to myself.
as Krishna says, Karmendrayani Sayanya Aste Mansati
Indriya Tanmula.
So if you are pretending, you cannot advance.
Pretentiousness.
Second point you were saying about the concentration. So Lord Krishna says 9.22. Ananyas Chintanto Mam Yajana Paripase Yashamit Bhrittanam Yog Kshemam Bhajana. So such a guarantee Krishna is giving that if you think of me, I'll take care of everything. Whatever you possess, Yog Kshemam Bhajana. I'll keep it, and whatever you need, I'll give you. Still we are so foolish. We don't know to surrender. My question is, you were saying about the Kesi demons.
Yeah.
So please tell us a bit more what instruction we get from the pastime.
I haven't read that pastime yet. I just took up read it long back.
Right.
Yeah.
Go and cry.
1
He
second.
was so powerful. He has so much strength.
Yeah.
And he's kicking Lord Balaram.
Looks like I'll give the mic to you. Probably you can enlighten us, or maybe after the class. Do you want to do that now? Or, yeah. Okay. All right. I didn't read the pastime as such. But yeah, it does represent a particular type of anartha, or this particular type of pride, and one is able to overcome that. Yes.
So the question is a bit different to the topics. We hear about how kings went to the forest to hunt.
Yeah.
Like even with Parikshit Maharaj, for example, he went to the forest to hunt, and at that time he was thirsty, and
Yeah.
the sages respected. So the great kings do that. So do they get reaction for killing animals as well?
Yeah, will Kshatriyas get reactions for killing animals? That's actually coming up in the few verses from now, because naturally a question will arise. So if there is an opportunity for sense gratification, everything is in front of us, then why we should not enjoy? Now there are regulations about what animals to be killed, to what extent they need to be killed. If you go over and above that, that's when you incur sinful reactions. So Prabhupada describes Kshatriyas are meant to get trained how to kill, so they kill ferocious animals to protect the sages. That way they practice their skills also. Then if they go over and above that, that's when they incur sinful reaction. That's my understanding. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned pride and seeing fairness in others. So are the others the consequence of pride, or are they listed as separate items?
They make up pride. So the elements that are listed, so they are described as the elements. Element means that which are building blocks of pride. So that's like the end result. Its pride is made up of all these. So, and some may be very close to each other, like deviousness and pretense could be like very close. So that's how it's described. Yes.
Just as a comment, there's different kinds of pride. Pride with arrogance is what we're talking about. But I remember when I was 13 or 14 or maybe younger, at my first woodwork class, and the teacher at the front said, before you do anything, I want you to turn around and have a look at the sign at the back of the room. And the sign at the back of the room read, "Pride in Craftsmanship." Now there was no arrogance in that. It was doing a job properly not only for yourself but for other people to enjoy. If you have love of a child, that's also pure. But the saying goes, pride goeth before a fall. And that type of pride is your own arrogance. And that's when that brings you to your knees. But sometimes being brought to your knees through that sort of pride brings you right back to God. I've done it 1,000 times. When everything I think is going okay in my way, that's when I'm away from God. But when I'm more reliant and I realise how small I am, that's when I'm closer.
One more point you were telling in class about Śrīmad Swami. I was in his Vyas Puja, I think 1993 in Germany. He repeated the same thing. I am accepting this honor on behalf of Vyas. If I feel, then if I am taking on me, I'm like a dog. He said all the people. There were about 120 people. I am taking all this credit on behalf of yes. That's one way of keeping the pride down.
Yeah, interesting point which James, isn't it? John brought out. Yes, so we are against false pride, being proud of material achievements. At the same time, like we understand that we are humble servant, so at least the conception we must have is that, and then if you realize that, then it's best. Because the intelligence has got aspects like generalizing, then going very specific, then going deeper, understanding, and also living by it. So that's when it moves towards, from intelligence towards knowledge and realized knowledge. So as you said, like doing an activity for Krishna and dedicating the results, and by pleasing Him, you also have that sense of accomplishment as I'm a servant of Krishna. So that pride of saying that I'm a servant of Krishna, I'm a humble servant of Krishna, that one can hold on to. So that will actually help us. So, yes, Madhuri.
You mentioning how this example of this man with the knife who was going to kill the chicken,
Yes.
and how the solution for that is to actually, I'm just paraphrasing, but to understand.
One has to change their belief.
You change the belief. I guess the question really is how, because the reason why there's so many animal slaughter and all that committed, and say for example in China, people are so ruthless, is because they are desensitized and they just don't know, they can't, there's no feeling there. So to understand the life principles, but how do you deal with something?
So the question is, people are so desensitized that they're just doing it. So how do we make them aware of the higher principles? Okay. I wish Prabhupada was there. He was there in China and preaching. So the strategy, at least with my understanding, what they're following in China is some of them doing all these abominable activities, they also want to keep their body fit. And for that they come for yoga. And when they're coming for yoga, they are exposed to some prasadam and taught some principles of yoga. One of them could be ahimsa, where they are given that exposure and education, and slowly it may take many attempts to feed them prasadam and then compare them with the higher taste, and then they eventually give up. So that was one way of doing it, educating, like going to the root and changing their belief that they, and probably showing scientific evidence that animals also have feelings, that this pain wave concept where if there is an excessive pain experienced by animals in a particular area, it attracts natural disasters there. So one way of looking at them is to educate them through scientific facts and how it will eventually, plus we are giving them an alternative of prasadam, which is the higher taste, combined with this and changing the belief gradually. And if we affect a larger portion, I think Prabhu, there's another devotee, Tamal Krishna Maharaj disciple, what's his name? He preaches in China. No, forgot his name. He used to come here. Yeah. So he said like a lot of them, Radhacharan Prabhu, like they're able to teach yoga to a larger people and do that. At that time they slowly bring in prasadam and then the principles and give them the knowledge and the proper solution. So, yes.
There are people who are killing animals who probably completely
Krishna.
unaware of the fact that it is sinful. And for example, child is eating a meat, is fed by mom, and those who are just consuming out of ignorance, what would be the karmic? Would it be like equally everyone who's partaking, or would it be some like different level, different grades of karmic reaction?
I would say it is part of some bad karma that you were born in a family that is eating meat. It's part of, we can analyze the karma cycle, it's too complex. So my understanding is like you have taken birth in this particular family which is eating meat because of your previous karma. And whether you know so the example is that of you touch the fire, the child touches the fire, still gets burnt. So ignorance is not an excuse. So you will equally get reactions. So whether you are forced to, whether you are fed in the family, because everybody gets the same. That's what, who transports it, who cooks it, who organizes, who eats. Because I'm a child, I'm innocent, I'm eating. Yes, you are innocent because in this lifetime you may seem to be innocent, but you have done certain activities in the past because of which you are born in a family which is eating meat. So, yeah, you will get reactions. Same way as that.
Srila Prabhupada also says ignorance is
It's not an excuse.
So it's a duty to find out first.
Yeah, ignorance is not an excuse. One has to find out. But is even in case of my own family, sometimes I've seen when they're really young, my sister's son, when he was given, at a very young age, when he was given egg and other things, he will just vomit. He won't take it. But over a period they kept giving and then he got used to it, and now so when they're pure, actually they can't handle it. But then you just get into it. Grantharaj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.